Welcome to the Hope Unlocked podcast. I'm Kristin Kurtz, your host. I pray this episode is like a holy IV of hope for your soul. Please help me welcome Sue Hamilton to the show. I actually just recently met her through a beautiful mutual friend of ours named Jennifer, who has a group called the Unshakable Confidence Club. I'll share more about that in the show notes if you want to check it out. But we just had a quick connection over the phone one day, and I was like, oh, girl, you need to share your story. So here she is, and I would love for you to just share a little bit about yourself, and then we'll kind of lead into, the testimony that you'd like to share with our listeners today.
Well, thank you. It's fun to be here. I love women that are doing the similar things that I'm doing. I want to do a podcast myself. So I'm a speaker and an author, and I use the word encourager instead of coach. Yeah. And so I love helping women just like you do. That's where my passion and my heart is. My background is very diverse. And so I come from a corporate background that I was a manager in customer service and managed a bunch of people. And then God pulled me away from that. I'd started doing speaking there, and then it just led into an interesting journey. So my background is varied. I do come from substance abuse as a teenager with alcohol and street drugs. Mm-hmm. I've survived some crazy motorcycle accident. And I've got tons of stories to share. You never know where we'll go today.
Yes. Well, I look forward to sharing what you're led to share. And I would love for you to, if you'd be willing to share the video with our listeners of your testimony, actually of your motorcycle accident. I could share that in the show notes for those to watch it. Very powerful. Maybe if you want to even share a little bit about that with us today, you're welcome.
Sure. Yeah. And I always keep it short because God ended up prodding me and poking me to finally write my story out. I verbally told it for many, many years, and I call it the motorcycle miracle story. And I wrote it in my memoir called Carried by Faith. And all of this information that I share today is on my website at suelhamilton.com. If you Google me, you'll find me. And I shared that story verbally for years, and I used it for lots of different analogies because it's an unbelievable story. Mm-hmm. And so then it took me 7 years to write this memoir. I never suggest that to people. Don't take that long. But what ended up happening with the short version of the motorcycle accident, we rode Harleys for years, and we would go down to Sturgis, South Dakota every year. And in this particular year, when we used to stay in Rapid City and then drive to Sturgis, which is about a 30-mile or minute, I don't know. You go fast. It doesn't take you too long on the interstate to Sturgis for the day. And on the interstate, there was 3 of us in a group, 3 motorcycles in a group, and my husband was leading, and I was in second position, and our friends were in third position. Mm-hmm. Then we were behind an RV, a self-contained RV, and they were cruising along the interstate. My husband decided to pass him, and he did, and I moved into his position, getting ready to pass that RV. What ended up happening is the engine in the RV blew up, and oil and antifreeze went all over the interstate. And I was the first motorcycle behind that RV. My motorcycle was totally out of control, and we were going very fast, interstate speed. And I had, my life did flash before me. I had one son at the time and my husband. And then what happened is the voice of a motorcycle safety instructor came into my head and said, lay it down, don't fight it. Lay it down, don't fight it. And I consciously did make the decision to let go of the handlebars and lean my weight over to the right side. And it then shot me off of the motorcycle. My motorcycle went in one direction, but I actually stayed in the lane, and I was sliding down the interstate on my back. And this interstate was slipperier than ice because the combination of oil and antifreeze is like a skating rink. Yeah. So I was sliding down the interstate on my back with only a leather vest on, my jeans, and my boots, and no helmet, because I had strapped my leather jacket and my helmet on the back of my bag because it was extremely hot that day. Okay. Yeah. So now I'm actually still alive, and I'm sliding down the interstate, going with the traffic, but the oncoming traffic is coming at me. And what I see is another motorcycle. It was not the people that were with us in our group. They were able to pull off to the side of the road. And this unmanned motorcycle is coming at me, and my legs, I'm like spaghetti. My legs are flailing around, my arms, and I'm trying to keep my head off the pavement because I don't have a helmet on. And what I make a decision to do is pull my legs together as tight as I can. And I aimed my boots for the seat of this motorcycle that was unmanned. So I made a connection and I hit the seat with my boots. And it was such a hard impact that it induced me into 3 somersaults. Wow. And the reason why I know all these details is because these friends of ours had pulled off to the side of the shoulder. They've put together the pieces that I can't remember. Mm-hmm. And when I made the connection, did the somersaults, we figured at least 3 somersaults. What happened next is I actually remember this part. I actually landed standing on my feet. Wow. On the shoulder of the interstate. And it was just like a landing, like a gymnast would do. Very hard, bang, boom. And I did not fall. I stayed standing. And I actually was standing when I came, realized what was going on. And I thought, oh my goodness. Mm-hmm. Actually, in my brain and how I tell this story, it's like, wow, heaven, it looks like Sturgis. Because I'm looking at the ditch and the houses off in the distance, and I'm thinking, I'm not dead. And so then I proceed to start looking at my arms, because my arms were bare, because I thought, I have to be hurt. I have to be hurt. Yeah. And I looked down at my legs, and there was only a small little wound on my arm, and then a hole in my jeans at my knee. But there was absolutely nothing wrong with me. Absolutely nothing wrong with me. That scratch on my arm was like a road rash. I mean, it was like nothing. It barely was even bleeding. Wow. So that's the short version of that story.
Yeah. And yeah, I would love for you to share the rest of it for all of us too. It's so rich. As you were talking, I just pulled out a couple, words / phrases. You said that there was a safety, like from your safety training,
motorcycle safety.
And he had shared with you to let go and release. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then when you completed this mission of letting go and releasing, and you found yourself standing firm.
Yes.
So I feel like there's definitely some spiritual meaning here that we can walk into, even in your own walk with the Lord. And
I'd love to, yeah.
Believer at this time, because I know for myself in my journey, I've had to learn to let go. I've had to learn to release, and I've also had to learn to stand firm. So there's, in the in between, it feels very shaky sometimes when you let go. It's kind of this, part of this season of voices of hope from the valley. There's kind of this, when you let go and surrender and you release, there's this in between part that can feel very shaky to the standing firm. So
very shaky.
Share a little bit more about, maybe even part of your testimony of being, released from addiction, and how you're standing firm in that.
Well, yeah. And what's so interesting when you do bring this up, I will tell you what my true belief is that the enemy wanted to take me out bad, in a bad way. Because during this time, it was in 1996, and I was at this time 6 years clean and sober, but fighting God tooth and nail. And so to me, it was God's way of saying, I got you. I'm never going to let you go. The enemy's not going to take you ever. And I have got your back. Yeah. So, because when I walked away from this, I mean, it's something that can't be described. If you have survived an accident, because I've shared with this story with many, and many people do, it changes your life. I can only tell you that. It just absolutely changes your life. So I was just like a baby believer at that time, fighting God. So when we compare this, what you were saying is that it was so rocky. I was not willing to let go. I was not willing to let God drive my life because I didn't trust at all. And that's what he's taken me on, this unbelievable journey of trust. Yeah. And with that, it has been exactly like that ride on the interstate that I'm flailing around for many, many years, not knowing what I was supposed to do because I kept on questioning, why would he have saved me? Right. Because at the time I felt, like dirty piece of trash. And so through that then, and if we compare it to the standing firm, I landed and I kept on standing. And through the years, I have walked a very, very strong, faithful walk from about, a short time after that. And it's been so challenging, but I have never, ever, ever been knocked down and laid flat on my face by anything. God has always held me up, always. It's just been an unbelievable journey.
What might that look like for you, just even since that, situation, for those who maybe are walking through some really hard times right now, and they don't really understand not laying down and falling face down and
some of the terms that we use are just kind of crazy when we start talking about God and whatever. But yeah, to me, it's like, what was one of the thoughts that I had about what should I talk about today? It's like, you got to want to have this thing. Yeah. There was no turning back for me. I did not want to stay in the darkness where I was at with alcohol and drugs. I had stayed sober for some time, but it's like, I had to take that next step. And so to me, I still talk to many people that are still thick in addictions. And it's like, how do you want to live today? I don't care what you believe in. It's like, let's just ask the question, how do you want to live today? Do you want to live for the next drink, the next needle, the next this, the next that? Is that what you want to live in? Do you want to live in the flop house? Do you want to live in the places that I've seen and been? I know where you've been. I did not want to go there again, ever. And so to me, it's like, I had a choice. Pick it. Do you believe in me, God says, or don't you? It's like, I had to make that decision. And so that's the part that I always say to people that are still living in that kind of lifestyle. It's like, I will not jam anything down your throat, man. It's like, let's just decide, how do you want to live today? Do you want to keep living this lifestyle? Because if you do, go there until you don't want to anymore. Yeah. And then let's talk.
So how did you, I also was saved from addiction when I was 25. So what did that look like for you? Like, how did you come to know the Lord? Did you grow up in church? Were you?
No. Well, we did not grow up in church going there all the time. We only went there on special occasions, rarely went there. Mm-hmm. So the only God that I knew was the one that my parents told me that was a condemning God that had a sledgehammer, that I was going to go to hell type of thing. I had several encounters with some pastors that didn't turn out good because of some things that they said, because I was an ornery teenager. So wasn't all their fault, but I did not find God for the longest time. And in high school, I said that I was an atheist. I really wasn't. When I found out later is that I believed there was something bigger and better than me. So later through a 12-step program, I understood that I was agnostic would be the terminology. I believed in a higher power or somebody, another being, but I still refused anything to do with that, anything, because I was so fearful and didn't know that there was a loving God. So it took me this 5 to 6 years in a 12-step program to come to the realization and finally take the cotton out of my ears to hear that this God that some of these people were talking about was a loving God. You could have a personal relationship with him. So that's how I came to know who this true loving God was.
Wow. So was there somebody who brought you to, is that AA? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. No, you know how I found God, that I always tell people this too. It's like, I remember all the different times that I cried out to God. He came and met me there and he said, it's going to be okay. I had the most unbelievable peace come over me. And I didn't even know what that word meant at that time. But I felt calm and peaceful, or calm and quiet. And then there was another time in a hotel room when I was on business that, again, a sense of peace that I can never explain it unless you experience it. So that's how I met God. There was no big, huge encounter. Nobody led me to God in any different prayer or anything like that. It wasn't at an event. It was just him.
So he met you.
Yes.
And he can meet anybody.
He got that right. And that's what I tell people, because it's like, there's there's nothing bad. I'm just telling you, there's so many different ways. Each one of us have our own story and how God's going to meet us. Yeah. So I just say, don't worry about the formula and the whatever and the this and the that. It's like, do you want him? Do you want him to live in your heart, or don't you? Yes. And that's how I keep it pretty simple.
So what does your relationship with him look like now? Being that you've surrendered and you're sober, and what are you up to these days?
Well, one of the things I always talk about is just like I mentioned, I'm in or I'm out. And that's how I have been with my journey with God. There's absolutely no other way, because I don't care how long I've been on this journey too. The enemy's alive and well, and he can distract me and get me off focus. I have to consciously make my decision to have a personal relationship with God. And I explain it like this: is like, if you're in a relationship with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, or with your husband or whatever, it's like a dating situation. You got to get to know this God guy, and then you have to keep developing this relationship. Even with a friendship, you and I are just getting to know each other. So it's like it keeps on developing if we choose to make it happen. And so my walk with God is everything in my day today. I take dedicated time to spend with him every single day in the Bible. I work hard at that. I work hard at many, many things, because the days that I don't, those are the days that are not good.
Yeah.
I can start my day over anytime. So it's not like the whole day's shot, but that's how I walk with him today.
Man, I know that there was an author, I think, I want to say it might have been Lisa TerKeurst. I probably read one of her books maybe 10 years ago. And I remember her saying, if it was her, I may be, but it was word before world. And I've hung on to that ever since. And
that's good.
It's like the bookends. I start the day with them and I end the day, whether it's in a book that's filling me up or the Bible. Typically it's both, or worship. But first thing in the morning is Bible, always.
Yep.
When I'm on vacation, I don't care. I have my Bible app. We have a phone. We have things so accessible. And I just like to remember, like, think of all of these countries that don't have the word yet. We are so accessible and there's really no excuse, right?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
No excuse. No
Well, and I
condemnation.
always like to say too, is that, one of the things that I always suggest to people too, because some people that I deal with, they don't even want yet to read the Bible yet. And I'm like, okay, but you got to start reading some type of devotion. And I mean, the people that I'm working with are believers that there is some type of God. I'm not dealing with there's all kinds of ministries, but so I always tell them, you got to have some type of devotional book. It's like, if you can't read very much, or if it's hard for you to understand, you have to have some type of quiet time to say, what's your will for me today? What are we doing today?
Yeah. Wow. So can I just ask, are you working with a lot of people who are kind of coming into recovery? When you said the people you work with, are these people that are in recovery, maybe just starting their walk out with Christ? What is that?
It's a mixture. It just depends. It really does. I mean, I most recently like within the last couple months, I've not worked with anybody active in addiction. I mostly work with women that are not very strong in their walk with God, that know who He is, but want to develop that relationship more and more. And they need more encouragement, more tools. They have a dream that they want to pursue with some, dream, and they need to have a more stronger relationship with God. So it just depends on who God puts in my life. And that's how I kind of walk.
So good. Being available. That's
yes.
what showed me, like, gosh, was it a few months ago? Just that reminder of be available. Just be available. Like, you don't know where He's going to bring somebody to you.
Right. And you know what? There's no I always use I use a magic wand when I do some presentations. I'm actually waving my hand right now. So for anybody that's listening, I'm actually waving my hand like a magic wand. There is no magic wand. There is no exact formula for you. It's like, it's all going to be different. Yeah. And that's a part that, to me, it's like, I'm available. I have to make myself available, because if I get myself too fine-tuned into this little pocket of these people, then I might miss some other opportunity too, because the people that we're supposed to be helping, guess what? They could be right in our house.
Right. Exactly. And they're like definitely first and foremost over the other
right.
people, for sure. Because I work with women outside of, in my business, but my household is men and
yep.
Young men. So it's very interesting how, I definitely agree. I definitely have like honed in a little bit more on who I'm called to walk alongside. And I see this woman, but I definitely, even the women that come to me, some of them are just so not that, right?
Yes.
But to be available, and, maybe it's not, I don't have what they need, but I have something else that they may need, or I have somebody else that can help them.
Right.
Be open to release and be like, hey, I don't think I'm the right person for you. I know
right.
Might be.
And it's so interesting that you bring that up, because that just happened to me. This younger gal, I would say she was probably old enough to be my daughter. And and she came up to me and she goes, you got so many interesting things in your life. I just love you. Could I get your telephone number? And I'm thinking, sure. But I told her too, it's like, we got to talk a little bit more, honey, because you might not like all the things that I have to say, or where I come from, or how my personality style is. So I always have to get into a relationship and do a discussion with people before you dive in too deep.
Right. Exactly. I love it. So what is a verse that you feel has carried you through since you kind of released and let go? Do you have a verse that you've clung to?
Well, the most challenging thing that I've dealt with throughout my entire walk, in the last couple of years, it hasn't been as bad, but has been trust. And so before I tell you what the verse is, the thing that I will bring to light is that, I did a lot of my drinking and my drugging when I was in my active brain development years, from 12 to 25 years old. And it is always a challenge for me to memorize anything. So I have always had that challenge. So when I started walking with God, it was very hard when people said, well, you got to memorize scripture. And I'm like going, what? I can't do that. The only thing that I could memorize was the serenity prayer. And that took me forever. And then I memorized the Lord's Prayer. So those two things were huge, huge things for me to memorize. So when it got time to start memorizing some verses, it was like, oh my. And I don't even remember how it all came about, but this verse is the one that I started memorizing. It was Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord God with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge him in all your ways, and he will make your paths, plural, straight. And I always say plural, straight, or plural with the S, because it's multiple paths. It's not just one path. Okay, we're on it. Now he's taking it to wherever we're going to go. We're going to go on bunny trails and take the Y and then this road, and sometimes go off in the ditch over here and there. So to me, it has many, many multiple meanings in those scriptures.
Love that. I am so with you. I sit on my life is often off the beaten path. I literally just sent that message to a friend today because I've learned, when I was saved from addiction, I thought my life would be like Cinderella. I thought everything was going to be like a straight path. Everything's going to go, perfect. And I immediately had 2 miscarriages right after I was saved. And I'm like, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
And I've just learned he's shown me that I'm a woman of wonder. And even today I was on a straight path, literally a straight, like asphalt path on a trail, a walking path. And all of a sudden I just had this leading to go off the beaten path. Here I find all these little turtles. They were sunning, and I just always am reminded about turtles that, come out of hiding. Like they go into their shell, and they have that protective shell, which reminds me of, his covering. I just always look at things in a very spiritual light, I guess.
Yeah.
But, that reminder to come out of hiding, and all these turtles just had their heads up. They were like looking at the sun, and I'm thinking, even they look at the sun. We just need to keep our eyes fixed on him. And so I love that. I love, we have so many different pathways, and even the paths that he takes us on, sometimes there are like little detours. You think that you're going to be doing this thing, right? Kind of like me, pathway in corporate, and then got, released in November of 2021. And it's been quite the adventure, let me just say. But now I'm on a different path, and I would say it's a more freedom path, right? So
yeah, and that's what's happened to me in the last couple of years too, after our shutdown of the world. And it's been very interesting. I always my personality is perfection. I got to know what's happening. I'm a planner, all these things. And he's just taken like all of the gates around me away. And it's like, you're just going to follow me. You're going to do what I'm going to tell you to do. And it's like, it's been an adventure. And that's what I say. It's like, you'll never, ever get bored on this journey, ever.
Yeah. Amen.
Hey, you want to mention, you were talking about how the standing firm, and I was standing on the side of the road. And what came to me too, I wanted to mention this, is that the standing firm, sometimes we think we are standing straight, maybe like a flagpole, or we are really firmly planted, because it does say that. But when I landed like that, I was so wobbly. Those in the playgrounds, the little kids go on those like almost big accordion type of little rides. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Like the animals that.
Yes. They're on those like big bungee cords, like a shock absorber. That's how I always felt when I landed. It was like this boom. It was like I should have fell, right? But I didn't. God held me up. And any time that I feel extremely weak, I like to go to the verse, and it's in Isaiah, I can't remember, but that I'm under his wings, the eagle's wings, he's always got me. I, could go on and on with different scriptures, but that's where I've been at in the last several years, is I have to trust him no matter what. And when I'm fighting, when I'm angry, when I'm being what I call a big B, when I'm doing things that I shouldn't be, all these different things, it's like, I got to stop and catch myself. Did I spend enough time with God today? What's going on? Did I talk to him at all? Did I ask him what I was supposed to be doing? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no, you didn't.
Yeah. So good. Oh my gosh. Just seeing that visual of the letting go and the standing firm. Like I believe that in the ministry that I was trained up in, we talk about TIP. It's an acronym for Think in Pictures. Yeah. So you can kind of grasp onto that today as she spoke these words of, sometimes it takes, he showed me, let go to hold on. Like we have to let go to be able to hold, like we can't hold on to everything. We need to let go, and then we need to grab on to him. Right.
Yeah. Well,
to stand firm, first of all.
Right. And, in the example of my accident, it makes absolutely no logical sense in our earthly minds that I should have let go of that motorcycle.
Totally. Totally. Right.
Yeah. So he held me, he got me up. And so what I say is that, my belief is that there was God called down an angel and said, go pick her up. The angel came down and swooped me up and brought me gently over to the side of the road and let me land like I just described. And I do have an angel tattooed on my shoulder that says carried by faith. So it's very important for me. Even today, I don't talk about this story every day. Even sharing it with you, and you're picking up on different pieces of analogies of the story. I love that, because it's like, that's what God told me to do. Tell the story. I came from a lot of darkness. I should not be talking and sharing the way I am today. But God, he knows what he wants to do with me and who he wants to put me into encounters with. Because, there's a lot of people that don't want to deal with the people I deal with. They don't even want to sit in the same room with them. They're like, I ain't that. And I'm like attracted to them. I'm like, hey, how you doing today, man?
Yeah, because we've been there.
Yes.
We've been to the depths. And
yes.
I, like you, came from trauma and so much like darkness. I should not be standing here. I'm standing right now. I literally should not be here. I feel like I like to say I'm on life number 17. I've had a lot of close encounters myself. So here we are, we're doing our thing, and we have walked through the fire, just like, this, like I said, this podcast is about women who walk through the fire and they continue to keep going. We want to share these stories with all of you to help you keep going as well. That's my favorite phrase, is keep going, keep going. Like you can't, like you need to rest. I'm very big into rest, but you need to keep going. You cannot stop this mission that he has you on. So
amen.
So much, Sue, for being here today. We will share all of her information if you'd like to contact her in the show notes. And I'm going to close with our anchoring verse. It is, may the God of hope fill you with all joy and peace in believing, so that by the power of the Holy Spirit you may abound in hope. And that's Romans 15:13. And again, as I like to say, brave voices set others free. So thank you for being a brave voice today, Sue.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll talk to you guys all next week. We'll have another episode coming. Thanks.